The city pulsed with an unseen rhythm, a frantic, insistent beat. For Maria, that rhythm was an internal one, a constant hum of urgency that never quieted. Her mornings began before dawn, a blur of emails, to-do lists, and hurried commutes. Her days were a relentless sprint from one meeting to the next, one task to another, each moment already mentally leaping to the next obligation. Even her evenings were packed, a succession of commitments, leaving no space for stillness, no moment for simply being. She was perpetually chasing something just out of reach, always looking for the next thing, convinced that if she slowed down, even for a second, she'd fall irrevocably behind. This pervasive constant haste, this inability to pause, to simply breathe, consumes lives, transforming existence into an endless, breathless race. This frantic energy echoes the vibrant, seemingly tireless dance of one of nature's most extraordinary creatures. Imagine the hummingbird, a tiny jewel of perpetual motion, its wings beating hundreds of times per second, hovering momentarily at one flower before a blur of iridescent feathers carries it to the next, always seeking the next drop of nectar without pause. Its life is a relentless pursuit, an intricate dance of survival at an astonishing speed. But what happens when this constant velocity, this perpetual pursuit, becomes a prison? What are the true costs when the rhythm of our lives is dictated by an unyielding urgency, preventing us from ever truly savoring the moments we relentlessly pursue? David sat at his desk, but his mind was already 3 steps ahead, planning the next email, the next phone call, the next task on his overflowing list. Even during a coffee break, he found himself scrolling through news feeds, unable to simply sit and drink. At home, he'd flit from one chore to another, starting a load of laundry, then remembering an unread article, then deciding to organize a drawer, never fully completing one thing before his mind raced to the next. This pervasive restlessness wasn't just a habit. It was a profound internal agitation, a constant urge to be doing, to be moving, to be productive. He longed for stillness, for a sense of calm, but his internal motor simply wouldn't switch off. He was perpetually in motion, driven by an unseen force, leaving him feeling fragmented and unfulfilled, a mind constantly chasing, never quite catching, the elusive sense of peace. This pervasive restlessness, this internal drive for continuous activity, finds its purest embodiment in the hummingbird's perpetual motion. These tiny birds are living engines, characterized by an astonishing metabolism and an almost ceaseless need for movement. Their wings can beat up to 80 times per second, and their hearts can race at over 1,200 beats per minute. They hover, dart, and flit from flower to flower, their existence defined by high-speed activity. Even when seemingly still, they are poised for instant flight, their tiny bodies buzzing with latent energy. Their foraging is a blur of constant activity, visiting hundreds or even thousands of flowers in a day. For the hummingbird, perpetual motion is not a choice, but a biological necessity for survival. A relentless search for the next energy source, an unending dance against the clock of its own hypermetabolism. The human experience of restlessness directly mirrors the hummingbird's perpetual motion on a neurological and psychological level. In humans, chronic restlessness is often linked to anxiety, AD, or a hyperactive sympathetic nervous system, leading to an inability to relax or focus on a single task. The prefrontal cortex, when constantly stimulated and pulled in multiple directions, struggles with executive function and sustained attention. Psychologically, restlessness can stem from a fear of being unproductive, a desire to avoid uncomfortable emotions by staying busy, or a societal pressure to constantly achieve. Evolutionary psychology suggests that an urge for exploration and resource acquisition was adaptive for our ancestors. However, when this instinct becomes excessive, it leads to burnout, anxiety, and a profound inability to find stillness or presence. Just as the hummingbird is driven by an unyielding need for constant activity, a restless person lives a life of perpetual motion, unable to find peace in the present moment, always anticipating the next thing. David felt the suffocating grip of his own restlessness, the internal churn that robbed him of presence. He was confronting the immense personal cost of this ceaseless activity, the quiet moments it obliterated, and the genuine connections it prevented. Would he continue to live in this blur of frantic motion, forever chasing an elusive sense of peace that always lay just beyond the next task? Or would he, like a hummingbird momentarily perching to conserve energy, dare to allow himself moments of stillness, to simply be without a pressing need to do, even if it felt uncomfortable? His instinct was to move, to fill every moment, to be productive. But the profound exhaustion, the yearning for a more grounded existence, now demanded a different, more courageous choice. He had to acknowledge that his restlessness was not just driving him, but also consuming him. The hummingbird's perpetual motion and relentless pursuit of energy offer a profound metaphor for the human struggle with restlessness. It teaches us that while drive and activity are vital, an unchecked urge for constant motion can lead to burnout, anxiety, and a profound inability to find inner peace. By understanding the primal imperative that drives the bird's tireless existence, we are invited to confront the origins and costs of our own internal agitation. May we learn from the hummingbird to discern when our activity is productive and when it is becoming a self-defeating cycle, and to understand that true vitality lies not in constant motion, but in the wisdom to find stillness, allowing ourselves to pause, to breathe, and to truly savor the richness of the present moment, rather than perpetually chasing the next. Sarah checked her watch again, a familiar knot tightening in her stomach. Every email needed an instant reply, every message a swift response. She spoke quickly, walked quickly, and even ate quickly, always feeling like time was slipping through her fingers. She'd often cut conversations short or rush through experiences because an insistent voice in her head screamed, "Hurry, there's so much more to do." This pervasive urgency wasn't just about efficiency. It was a constant, low-grade panic, a fear of being left behind, of missing out on opportunities. She longed to slow down, to savor moments, but the internal clock dictated her every move, leaving her feeling perpetually rushed, stressed, and unable to fully immerse herself in anything, constantly reaching for the next moment before the current one had even fully unfolded. This pervasive urgency, this relentless drive for speed and immediate action, finds its striking parallel in the hummingbird's high-speed foraging. These birds need to consume vast quantities of nectar daily to fuel their incredibly fast metabolisms. This means they cannot linger. They approach a flower, extract its nectar with astonishing speed, and then, in a blur, dart to the next. Their entire foraging strategy is built on efficiency and speed, minimizing time spent at any single source to maximize overall intake. There is an intrinsic, biological imperative to always be moving, always seeking the next available resource, as pausing for too long could mean starvation. For the hummingbird, high-speed urgency is a fundamental aspect of its survival, a continuous, rapid search for the next necessary sustenance, leaving no room for dawdling or leisure. The human experience of urgency directly mirrors the hummingbird's high-speed foraging. In human neurobiology, chronic urgency can be linked to an overactive sympathetic nervous system, leading to a constant state of heightened arousal. The amygdala may perceive situations as more time-sensitive or threatening than they are, triggering a sense of panic. This urgency is often fueled by societal pressures for productivity, a fear of missing opportunities, or a deep-seated belief that one must always be on. Evolutionary psychology suggests that a sense of urgency was adaptive for ancestors when faced with immediate threats or fleeting opportunities for resources. However, when it becomes chronic, it leads to burnout, anxiety, and an inability to experience the present moment fully. Just as the hummingbird is driven by an unyielding need for rapid resource acquisition, a person consumed by urgency lives a life of perpetual haste, unable to find stillness or peace in their day, always rushing to the next thing. Sarah felt the suffocating grip of her own urgency, the constant internal demand to hurry. She was confronting the immense personal cost of this relentless speed, the precious moments it bypassed and the genuine connections it fragmented. Would she continue to live in this breathless race, forever chasing a fleeting sense of completion that always lay just beyond her grasp? Or would she, like a hummingbird, despite its inherent speed, sometimes pausing for a fraction longer at a particularly rich flower, dare to intentionally slow down, to savor, to linger in the present moment, even if it felt counterintuitive? Her instinct was to accelerate, to push through, to conquer time. But the profound exhaustion, the yearning for a more mindful existence, now demanded a different, more courageous choice. She had to acknowledge that her urgency was not just driving her, but also depleting her. The hummingbird's high-speed foraging and relentless urgency offer a profound metaphor for the human struggle with constant haste. It teaches us that while efficiency is valuable, an unchecked obsession with speed can lead to profound burnout, anxiety, and a diminished capacity for true enjoyment of life. By understanding the primal imperative that drives the bird's rapid resource acquisition, we are invited to confront the origins and costs of our own pervasive sense of urgency. May we learn from the hummingbird to discern when our speed is productive and when it is becoming destructive, and to understand that true fulfillment lies not in perpetually rushing to the next, but in the wisdom to intentionally slow down, allowing ourselves to be present, to savor, and to truly appreciate the richness of the journey, rather than just the destination. Mark's alarm blared, but he simply pressed snooze, his body feeling like a lead weight. He'd been working 14-hour days for months, powered by caffeine and sheer willpower. His mind felt foggy, his temper short, and even simple tasks felt overwhelming. He'd lost interest in hobbies, barely saw friends, and often felt a quiet despair. This pervasive burnout wasn't just tiredness. It was a profound physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion, a complete depletion of his reserves. He knew he needed to stop, to rest, but the demands felt endless, and the internal pressure to keep going was immense. He was living on fumes, a perpetual motion machine grinding to a halt, a vibrant spirit slowly being extinguished by the relentless pace of his own life. This profound state of burnout finds its parallel in the hummingbird's metabolic extremes and the constant knife edge it lives on. Hummingbirds have the highest metabolic rate of any endothermic animal, needing to consume half their body weight in nectar daily to survive. This requires constant and intense activity. If they go without food for even a few hours, especially overnight, they can enter a state of torpor, a hibernation-like state to conserve energy from which they must slowly recover. This extreme metabolism means they are perpetually on the verge of energy depletion, living with no margin for error or prolonged inactivity. Their life is a constant push to acquire enough fuel, and the potential for complete metabolic exhaustion is a very real, ever-present threat. For the hummingbird, the line between peak performance and profound depletion is incredibly thin, a constant battle against physical collapse. The human experience of burnout directly mirrors the hummingbird's metabolic extremes. In human neurobiology, burnout is a state of chronic stress that leads to physical and emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced efficacy. It results from prolonged activation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, leading to dysregulation of stress hormones like cortisol. The prefrontal cortex becomes impaired, affecting decision-making and cognitive function. Psychologically, burnout is often a consequence of pushing oneself beyond sustainable limits due to perfectionism, external pressure, or an inability to set boundaries. Evolutionary psychology suggests that while a strong work ethic was adaptive, chronic depletion without recovery is fundamentally unsustainable for complex organisms. Just as the hummingbird operates at the brink of metabolic collapse, a person experiencing burnout lives in a state of profound chronic depletion, their physical and mental resources utterly exhausted, unable to recover because the demands never cease. Mark felt the crushing weight of his burnout, the profound weariness that permeated his entire being. He was confronting the immense personal cost of his unsustainable pace, the way it was eroding his health and dimming his spirit. Would he continue to push himself to the brink, believing that he had no choice but to keep going until he inevitably collapsed? Or would he, like a hummingbird entering torpor to survive a period of scarcity, dare to deliberately slow down, to step back, to prioritize deep rest and recovery, even if it meant temporarily reducing his output? His instinct was to press on, to overcome, to ignore the signals of exhaustion. But the profound depletion, the desperate yearning for restoration, now demanded a different, more courageous choice. He had to acknowledge that his endurance was not just making him productive, but also slowly destroying him. The hummingbird, as metabolic extremes and constant proximity to exhaustion, offer a powerful and stark metaphor for the human struggle with burnout. It teaches us that while drive and intensity are admirable, an unchecked, unsustainable pace will inevitably lead to profound depletion and breakdown. By understanding the primal vulnerability of the bird's hypermetabolism, we are invited to confront the origins and costs of our own relentless striving. May we learn from the hummingbird to recognize the critical importance of rest and recovery, to honor our biological limits, and to understand that true resilience lies not in perpetually pushing through, but in the wisdom to intentionally slow down, to replenish our reserves, and to find a sustainable rhythm that allows us to thrive rather than merely survive. Chloe was perpetually in motion, even when her body cried for rest. In conversations, her mind would race ahead, formulating her next thought before the other person finished speaking. At a meditation retreat, she found her thoughts buzzing like a trapped fly, unable to find stillness. This pervasive inability to slow down wasn't a choice. It was an ingrained pattern, a constant internal hum of activity that made true relaxation feel alien, even threatening. She longed for a sense of calm, for moments of quiet presence, but her nervous system seemed hardwired for speed, always expecting the next demand, the next stimulation. Her life felt like a high-speed video, the details blurring, leaving her feeling disconnected from the richness of slow moments, perpetually hovering above true engagement. This pervasive inability to slow down finds its compelling parallel in the hummingbird, its perpetual hover, and its restless flight patterns. Hummingbirds rarely perch for long periods. Even when feeding, they often hover, expending enormous energy to maintain their position. Their flight isn't just about moving from A to B. It's a constant, rapid adjustment, a tremor of latent energy always ready to dart. This perpetual hover signifies a creature that is literally designed for speed and constant vigilance, unable to truly settle down or relax its immense metabolic output for extended periods during its active hours. Even when resting, their tiny hearts beat far faster than a human's, and they maintain a high body temperature, reflecting a system always on the brink of action. For the hummingbird, slowing down significantly is not a natural state. It's a temporary critical measure, making their typical existence one of constant, urgent movement. The human experience of an inability to slow down mirrors the hummingbird's perpetual hover. In human neurobiology, this can be linked to an overactive sympathetic nervous system, leading to a persistent state of alertness and difficulty relaxing. Conditions like anxiety disorders often manifest as an inability to quiet the mind or body. Psychologically, this compulsion to be constantly active can stem from a deep-seated fear of boredom, a need for external stimulation, or an internalized belief that stillness equals unproductivity or a loss of control. Evolutionary psychology suggests that vigilance and rapid response were adaptive in threatening environments. However, when this instinct becomes chronic, it leads to sleep disturbances, chronic fatigue, and a profound inability to experience mindfulness or true presence. Just as the hummingbird is designed for perpetual motion and high-energy vigilance, a person unable to slow down lives a life of constant internal and external activity, never truly present in the moment, always anticipating the next, unable to find peace in stillness. Chloe felt the suffocating grip of her own constant acceleration, the internal motor that refused to switch off. She was confronting the immense personal cost of this relentless speed, the quiet moments it bulldozed, and the genuine connections it bypassed. When she continued to live in this high-speed blur, forever missing the subtle beauty of the present moment, forever driven by an unseen internal whip? Or would she, like a hummingbird finding a moment of deep, restorative rest in torpor, dare to intentionally untense, to consciously slow her breath, to allow moments of genuine stillness, even if it felt terrifyingly unproductive? Her instinct was to push, to fill every second, to remain on. But the profound exhaustion, the yearning for a more grounded, present existence, now demanded a different, more courageous choice. She had to acknowledge that her inability to slow down was not just making her productive, but also depleting her. The hummingbird's perpetual hover and its instinctual inability to truly slow down offer a powerful metaphor for the human struggle with constant mental and physical acceleration. It teaches us that while vigilance and responsiveness are vital, an unchecked compulsion for speed and activity can lead to profound exhaustion, anxiety, and a diminished capacity for true presence. By understanding the primal energy that drives the hummingbird's relentless movement, we are invited to confront the origins and costs of our own inability to find stillness. May we learn from the hummingbird to discern when our activity is purposeful and when it is becoming a self-defeating treadmill, and to understand that true well-being lies not in perpetual motion, but in the wisdom to create moments of deliberate stillness, allowing ourselves to pause, to breathe, and to truly engage with the richness of life that unfolds when we finally slow down. Liam scrolled through social media, a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. Everyone seemed to be traveling, achieving, celebrating. A voice in his head screamed, "You're missing out. You're not doing enough." He'd agree to every invitation, juggle multiple projects, and relentlessly seek out new experiences, even when exhausted, driven by a pervasive fear of missing out. He was terrified of not being where the action was, of not capitalizing on every opportunity, of not living life to its fullest, which ironically led to living a fragmented, superficial existence. He longed for contentment, for a feeling of enough, but the relentless pressure to keep up, to always be seeking the next best thing, left him feeling perpetually inadequate and unfulfilled, a restless seeker forever chasing an elusive sense of completeness. This pervasive fear of missing out, particularly on vital resources, finds its compelling parallel in the hummingbird's relentless search for the next nectar source. For a hummingbird, nectar is not just a treat. It is its lifeblood, its primary source of energy. They visit hundreds, even thousands, of flowers daily, and if one flower is empty, they quickly move to the next. There's an inherent urgency, a biological imperative, to always be seeking, to always be moving towards the next potential source of sustenance. Lingering too long at a depleted flower or missing a newly bloomed one could be detrimental to its survival. This constant, high-energy foraging is driven by an instinctual fear of missing out on crucial energy, a relentless pursuit of the next viable resource, ensuring its incredibly demanding metabolism is continuously fed. The human experience of fear of missing out directly mirrors the hummingbird, S. Relentless search for the next nectar source. In human neurobiology, FOMO is linked to activation in reward pathways and the amygdala, leading to anxiety when perceiving that others are experiencing positive events that one is not. It's often exacerbated by social media, creating a constant awareness of others' perceived successes and experiences. Psychologically, FOMO stems from a combination of social comparison, a fear of regret, and a desire for social connection or validation. Evolutionary psychology suggests that being attuned to opportunities within one's social group or environment was adaptive for survival. However, in modern society, this instinct becomes maladaptive, leading to chronic anxiety, overcommitment, superficial engagement, and a profound inability to be content with one's current situation. Just as the hummingbird is biologically wired to constantly seek the next energy source, a person consumed by FOMO is perpetually driven to chase every perceived opportunity. Unable to find satisfaction in what they have, always yearning for the next experience. Liam felt the suffocating grip of his own FOMO, the constant internal pressure to be everywhere, to do everything. He was confronting the immense personal cost of this relentless pursuit, the exhaustion it caused, and the genuine experiences it prevented him from savoring. Would he continue to live in this frantic chase, forever striving for an elusive sense of completeness that always lay just beyond the next experience? Or would he, like a hummingbird, despite its natural inclination, sometimes choosing to rest or to focus on a truly rich source, dare to intentionally slow down, to say no to some opportunities, to cultivate contentment in the present moment, even if it meant missing out on something? His instinct was to say yes, to engage, to gather every experience. But the profound exhaustion, the yearning for a more grounded, fulfilling existence, now demanded a different, more courageous choice. He had to acknowledge that his FOMO was not just pushing him, but also depleting him. The hummingbird's relentless search for the next nectar and its biological imperative to not miss out offer a powerful metaphor for the human struggle with fear of missing out. It teaches us that while awareness of opportunities is important, an unchecked compulsion to constantly pursue every perceived option can lead to profound anxiety, overcommitment, and a diminished capacity for true contentment. By understanding the primal drive that compels the bird to seek constant sustenance, we are invited to confront the origins and costs of our own restless pursuit of more. May we learn from the hummingbird to discern when our drive for new experiences is enriching and when it is becoming a source of chronic anxiety, and to understand that true fulfillment lies not in relentlessly chasing every possibility, but in the wisdom to appreciate and savor the richness of what we already have, and what is right in front of us, finding peace in the present moment.